Morning Year 8. So this is our last week on multicultural poetry. When you return from the February half term, we will be doing a new topic. So I guess this is kind of a summarising as to everything that we've had a look at. So the do now is, what does the word diversity mean to you? So just feeding on from the do now activity, diversity is the practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations and many other things. So many of the poems that we've looked at recently have been multicultural poems, and they've made us look at things that are a little bit different to the things that we're perhaps normal to. So we've had a look at different places, we've had a look at different styles of living, we've had to think about different cultures. We've also had to think about animals and kind of that ugliness on the outside versus the beauty that might be on the inside. So all of our poems have been linked to this idea of diversity. So I want you to have a read of this poem here. It's called The Crayon Box That Talked, okay? And I want you to think about how this poem could link to diversity. So I'm hoping that you realise that this poem is obviously about diversity. The idea is that they've used the crayon box, the different coloured crayons, to suggest that life would be boring if we were all the same. And that links to diversity, doesn't it? If everyone was the same, everyone looked the same, dressed the same, talked the same, then the world would be a very boring place. We'd never make friends with anyone because we'd all just be the same person. We'd never have interests or passions, you know, we probably would never choose a career path because we'd never have a desire to do that. So the crayon box, although it is about coloured crayons, it links to humans and the fact that, you know, everything is different, and that's good. That's a good thing. The diversity that we have in our country and in our lives is a positive thing, not a negative thing. So right at the beginning of this unit of work, I asked you to do this matching activity about language devices and some structural features to do with poetry. I'm curious to see if you could do it a little bit quicker this time and if you're feeling a little bit more confident about some of the devices that you should look for when you are analysing poetry. So have a go at it again for me. Don't move on to the next slide until you're finished because the answers are on there, okay? And then have a check of your answers and see if you can do it any quicker. Set yourself a little time limit and see if you can do it in that time. So here are the answers. Make sure that you mark them in your book in green pen, okay? If there's any that you're struggling with, maybe make a note of them, and then next time that we come back around to poetry, we can obviously go over those again, or maybe if you want to drop me an email just to say that there's one that you're struggling with, and I can maybe try and explain it in a little bit more depth for you. So what I'd like you to spend the rest of this lesson doing is annotating the poem, The Crayon Box That Talked, okay? Now, obviously, I understand some of you might not have printers at home, so I'm going to ask you to copy out the poem. It's not too long, so it shouldn't take too much time. So annotation, remember, is essentially picking out lines from the poem and saying what language feature has been used in them, and then also saying what that might suggest to you. So, for example, the first line is a rhetorical question. It's a question that doesn't require an answer. And I think this makes people think that whatever the poet is about to discuss could make the world a better place, because he said, wouldn't it be terrible? So it makes me think, you know, well, he's not actually talking about something that is terrible. He's thinking about something that could be terrible. So maybe whatever he's going to talk about is going to make the world a better place. So annotation is about looking at each line, thinking about if there's a language feature present, and then having to think about what that line makes you think, and then having to think about how all of those lines kind of feed into this wider topic of diversity, okay? So by the end of today's lesson, you should have a beautiful poem that is analysed and annotated to the maximum, okay?